My name is Claire Mitchell. I'm 31 years old, and 3 years ago, I did the hardest thing I've ever done. I cut all contact with my family. I blocked every phone number, deleted every social media connection, moved to a new apartment without giving them the address, and simply stopped existing in their world. I waited for someone to notice, to reach out, to ask if I was okay, or where I'd gone, or whether I was even alive. Nobody did. Not my parents. Not my sister Victoria, the Harvard-educated corporate lawyer. Not my brother Marcus, the tech entrepreneur who'd sold his company for millions. 3 years of complete silence that confirmed what I'd always known deep down. I was invisible to them, had always been invisible, mattered so little that they didn't even notice when I disappeared. Then my phone rang with an unknown number, and a lawyer's voice said, "Miss Mitchell, your family is facing federal criminal charges and complete financial ruin. They need your signature on trust documents to access the only money that can save them. Without your authorization, they lose everything." And I realized something absolutely beautiful. The daughter they'd treated like worthless disappointment for 28 years, the one whose birthdays they forgot, and whose accomplishments they dismissed, the invisible one they never bothered to call. I was suddenly the only person who could save them. And they were about to find out exactly what 3 years of not noticing your daughter's absence actually costs. Before I take you back to that phone call and explain how we got here, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Then drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I want to know who's here with me, who understands what it means to be invisible in your own family. Now let me take you back to the beginning, to growing up as the Mitchell family disappointment in a world where only success and status mattered. I'm the youngest of 3 children born to Richard and Catherine Mitchell, Richard being a ruthless corporate investor who measured human worth by net worth, and Catherine, a former socialite who treated family relationships like business transactions to be managed and optimized. My older sister Victoria is 36, graduated from Harvard Law, married a prominent cardiovascular surgeon named Dr. James Whitmore, and lives in a sprawling estate in Connecticut that gets featured in home design magazines. She embodies everything the Mitchell family values: prestige, wealth, the right connections, the ability to name-drop at country club events and make other wealthy people feel inadequate. My brother Marcus is 33, built a tech company from scratch, sold it for tens of millions, and now runs a venture capital firm that gets written about in Forbes and TechCrunch. My father openly calls Marcus the son I always wanted at family gatherings, seemingly forgetting, or not caring, that Marcus is the only son he has, that saying it that way implies he wanted a different son than the one he got. Victoria and Marcus are the golden children, the ones who shine, the ones my parents brag about to business associates and country club friends, the ones whose photos cover the walls of my parents' home in expensive frames. And then there's me, Claire, the afterthought, the disappointment, the one my father introduces to his colleagues with a vague gesture and, "This is Claire, she works with kids," in a tone that makes it sound like I clean kennels for a living instead of teaching elementary school. I chose education, specifically special needs education, because I found it deeply meaningful, because I loved helping children who felt overlooked and invisible, because I understood what it felt like to be dismissed and underestimated, and I wanted to give kids what I never had. My family treated this choice like a personal failure, like I'd deliberately chosen poverty and irrelevance to embarrass them. "Still babysitting?" my mother would ask at every family gathering, her voice dripping with that particular brand of upper-class disdain. "When are you going to get a real career? Something you can actually talk about at parties without people losing interest." My father was worse. He'd talk about Victoria's latest case and Marcus's newest investment for 30 minutes straight. Then, when someone politely asked what I did, he'd wave his hand dismissively and say, "Oh, Claire teaches or something," before changing the subject back to the accomplished children who made him proud. Family dinners were performances where Victoria and Marcus starred, while I sat silently at the end of the table, My contributions to conversation talked over or ignored entirely. My attempts to share anything about my life met with glazed eyes and quick pivots back to more important topics. I'd mention a breakthrough with a struggling student, and my mother would interrupt with, "That's nice, dear. Anyway, Victoria, tell us more about the murder case." I'd share that I'd gotten a teaching award, and my father would nod absently while scrolling through his phone, not even pretending to listen. Birthday celebrations happened for Victoria and Marcus with elaborate parties, expensive gifts, the whole family gathering to celebrate their existence. Victoria's 30th birthday was a catered event for 60 people at my parents' country club. Marcus's 30th was a weekend at a luxury resort that my parents paid for entirely. My 30th birthday? I waited all day for a phone call that never came. 3 days later, my mother sent a text. Not even a call, a text that said, "Oh, sorry, sweetie. We were busy with Marcus's funding announcement. We'll take you to lunch next month." Next month never happened. They forgot. Again. Like they forgot every year. I tried for years to win their approval, to become someone they could value, someone they might actually love if I just achieved enough, or changed enough, or became enough of whatever they wanted. I attempted law school to mirror Victoria, thinking maybe if I followed her path, they'd finally see me. I lasted 1 semester before the misery of trying to be someone I wasn't became unbearable. I tried business school to impress my father, enrolled in an MBA program I hated, forced myself through classes that made me feel dead inside. All for the hope that maybe Richard Mitchell would look at me with even a fraction of the pride he showed Marcus. I dropped out after a year because I was having panic attacks, and my therapist told me I was literally making myself sick trying to earn love from people who were fundamentally incapable of giving it. I endured sabotaged relationships when I brought partners home. My family would find ways to make them feel unwelcome or not good enough, would make comments about their careers or backgrounds or education that drove wedges between us. One boyfriend left me after a single dinner with my family because, as he said, "I can't watch you shrink yourself like that, become invisible while they talk around you like you're not even there." I spent thousands of dollars in therapy trying to process the constant rejection, the feeling of never being enough, the knowledge that the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally saw me as a burden they tolerated rather than a daughter they cherished. The breaking point came on my 28th birthday, and I remember every detail of that day with perfect clarity, because it was the day I finally understood that nothing I did would ever matter to them, that I could achieve anything or change everything, and they still wouldn't see me. I waited all day for calls or messages or some acknowledgement that I existed, that I'd been born 28 years ago, and maybe that was worth noting. Nothing came. No calls, no texts, no emails, not even a Facebook post. I told myself they were busy. They'd call later. They wouldn't actually forget. By 9 p.m., I couldn't take it anymore, and I called my mother, my voice shaking, trying to sound casual instead of devastated. "Hi, Mom. It's Claire." She sounded distracted, annoyed even. "Oh, Claire, hi, what's up?" Not "happy birthday," not "oh my God, I'm so sorry I forgot." Just "what's up," like I was a telemarketer interrupting her evening. "It's my birthday," I said, hating how small my voice sounded. "I just thought maybe you guys were planning to call or—" "Oh, darling, I'm sorry. We've been so busy celebrating Marcus's new funding round. It's a really big deal. His company just secured Series B funding, $25 million. Can you believe it? We've been at dinner with the investors all evening. You understand. We'll catch up with you next month, okay?" She hung up before I could respond, before I could say that, no, I didn't understand how my brother's business success meant my entire existence could be forgotten. That night I sat on my apartment floor and cried until I couldn't breathe. Cried for the little girl who'd spent her childhood trying to make her parents look at her with the same pride they gave her siblings. Cried for the adult woman who still hadn't learned that some people are incapable of love that isn't transactional. And then I made the hardest and healthiest decision of my life. I was done. I was completely, utterly, permanently done trying to win love from people who didn't have it to give. The next morning, I blocked my parents' numbers, Victoria's number, Marcus's number, every family member and family friend on every platform. I unfollowed, unfriended, disconnected from every Mitchell, except the one looking back at me from the mirror. I told my landlord I was moving and found a new apartment across town. Never gave my family the new address, forwarded my mail to a P.O. box. I stopped responding to the occasional impersonal group emails about family events. Not that anyone noticed I'd stopped responding, because I'd never been expected to respond in the first place. I simply removed myself from their lives entirely, excised myself like a splinter they'd never noticed was there, and waited to see if anyone would care enough to come looking. No one did. Not for 3 entire years. 3 years of birthdays and Christmases and Thanksgivings and random Tuesday afternoons when a parent who loved their child might think, I haven't heard from Claire in a while, maybe I should check on her. 3 years of opportunities for Victoria to reach out sister to sister, for Marcus to send even a brief, "Hey, how are you?" text, for my mother to wonder why her youngest daughter had gone silent, for my father to notice that one of his 3 children had stopped existing in his awareness. Nothing. Complete and total silence that confirmed what I'd always suspected, but tried not to believe. I was so utterly invisible to them that they didn't even notice when I disappeared. During those 3 years, I rebuilt my life completely, like a burn victim growing new skin, painful and slow, but necessary and ultimately healing. I found an excellent trauma-informed therapist named Dr. Sarah Chen, who specialized in family estrangement and helped me process what she gently termed profound emotional neglect and invalidation across your entire developmental period. I learned terms like scapegoat child and golden child syndrome and narcissistic family systems that made my entire childhood suddenly make horrible sense. I cultivated genuine friendships with colleagues at the elementary school where I taught, with neighbors in my apartment building, with people from a book club I joined. Friendships based on actually liking each other rather than obligation or blood relation. I started dating Emma, a museum curator I met at a community art class, someone kind and thoughtful who listened when I talked and remembered things I told her and seemed to genuinely enjoy my company for reasons that had nothing to do with my resume or social status. I created a small, authentic life filled with people who actually cared whether I existed, who noticed when I was quiet or sad, who celebrated my small victories and mourned my losses with me, who saw me as a whole person worthy of attention and care. My chosen family, Emma, my close friends, my therapist, my favorite students and their parents who wrote me thank you notes that made me cry, gave me what the Mitchells never could, the feeling of mattering, of being valued for who I was rather than what I achieved or how I reflected on them. And my biological family? They never noticed I was gone. Not a single phone call. Not one email asking where I'd been or if I was okay. Not even a "thinking of you" text on a birthday they'd forget anyway. 3 years and 2 months of silence so complete, it was almost impressive in its totality. Then, on a random Tuesday afternoon while I was grading spelling tests at my kitchen table, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. I'd learned to ignore unknown numbers because they were usually spam. But something made me pick up. Some instinct I couldn't name, and a man's voice said words that would change everything. "Miss Mitchell, this is Lawrence Pemberton, attorney for the Mitchell Family Trust. I need to speak with you urgently about a matter of critical legal and financial importance." My first thought was that someone had died. My stomach clenched despite everything they'd done or failed to do. I didn't wish them dead, didn't want that kind of pain for anyone. But Lawrence Pemberton's tone wasn't one of condolences or sympathy. It was stress and urgency and barely controlled panic. "I'm calling because your family is facing a severe financial crisis that requires your immediate involvement. Are you available to meet in person to discuss confidential matters regarding the Harrison Family Trust? The Harrison Family Trust. I vaguely remembered my grandmother, my father's mother, Evelyn Harrison Mitchell, mentioning something about a trust years ago, before she died when I was 19. But I'd never been included in family financial discussions, because I was the disappointment who made $48,000 a year teaching children to read. So why would my opinion on money matter? I barely knew the trust existed beyond Grandma Evelyn's cryptic comment at her 80th birthday party about making sure all my grandchildren are protected equally. What does this have to do with me? I asked carefully, my teacher voice automatically activating, calm, neutral, giving nothing away. Lawrence Pemberton took a breath that sounded like he'd been dreading this conversation. Your father made certain aggressive investment decisions that have resulted in significant legal liabilities and federal criminal charges. The family's personal assets are currently frozen due to ongoing litigation. The only accessible funds are in the Harrison Family Trust, established by your late grandmother. However, the trust has very specific stipulations regarding distributions that require your involvement. I waited, saying nothing, letting the silence stretch until he was forced to fill it. A technique I'd learned from managing classrooms full of children who thought they could outweight me. The trust requires unanimous consent from all of Evelyn Harrison Mitchell's living grandchildren to access the principal for emergency purposes. Pemberton continued, and I could hear him choosing his words carefully. That means you, Victoria, and Marcus must all sign authorization documents. Without your signature, Miss Mitchell, the trust remains completely locked, and your family cannot access the funds they desperately need to mount legal defenses, settle civil suits, and avoid complete financial devastation. I need to pause here for a second, because this is the moment I understood something absolutely beautiful and terrible at the same time. My grandmother Evelyn, who died when I was 19, who'd been one of the only family members who ever seemed to actually see me and care about my existence, she'd built a failsafe into her trust that gave me power, gave the invisible grandchild an equal voice with the golden ones. She'd required unanimous consent, which meant Victoria with her Harvard law degree, and Marcus with his millions, and me with my elementary school teaching salary, all had exactly the same veto power. Grandma Evelyn had seen what my family was, had known how they treated me, and she'd built protection into her legacy that would force them to acknowledge I existed, or lose everything. If you've ever been the invisible child in a family that only valued achievement and status, drop invisible in the comments. And if you've ever had someone underestimate you catastrophically, type karma. Subscribe if you haven't already, because what happens next, the desperate phone calls, the pathetic attempts at manipulation, the moment they realize the daughter they threw away holds their entire future in her hands, shows that sometimes the people who treat you worst need you most. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, I said slowly, and my voice was so calm it surprised me. My family, who hasn't spoken to me in over 3 years, who didn't notice that I'd completely cut contact and disappeared from their lives, now needs me to sign something to save them from the consequences of their own illegal actions? Lawrence Pemberton cleared his throat uncomfortably. I understand there may be personal complications in your family relationships, Miss Mitchell. But yes, that's essentially accurate. Your signature is required. And what happens if I don't sign? I asked, genuinely curious. A long pause. Your father faces federal charges for securities fraud. Without adequate legal representation, he'll likely be convicted and serve significant prison time. Your brother Marcus's company is implicated in the same scheme. He could face similar charges and prison time as well. Your sister's assets are tied up in your father's corporate structure and are at risk of complete seizure. Your parents stand to lose everything: their home, their savings, their entire lifestyle. Without access to the trust funds, they have no way to pay legal fees, settle civil suits, or maintain even basic living expenses during the legal proceedings. He paused again. Miss Mitchell, I should emphasize the severity of the situation. We're talking about the complete destruction of your family's financial security and likely imprisonment for your father and brother. Without your cooperation, there's no path forward for them. And where were they when I needed their cooperation? I asked quietly, and something in my tone made Pemberton go very still. Where were they when I needed support, or acknowledgement, or even basic awareness of my existence? Where were they for 3 years? For 28 years before that? Miss Mitchell, I understand there may be personal grievances, but surely you don't want to see your family destroyed. His voice carried that particular paternalistic tone men use when they're trying to manipulate women through guilt and social obligation. Surely family loyalty requires you to help them in their time of desperate need. I felt a strange calm settle over me like a blanket, like something clicking into place that had been dislocated my entire life. Mr. Pemberton, I need time to think about this. I'll be in touch when I've made my decision. Wait, Miss Mitchell. The timeline is extremely urgent. We need your signature within the next week, preferably within the next few days. Every day we wait is another day your father doesn't have adequate legal representation. Another day the civil suits accumulate damages. Another day your family moves closer to complete ruin. Please, you need to understand. I hung up mid-sentence, and the silence that followed felt like power, like agency, like 3 years of being invisible suddenly reversing into being the only person who mattered at all. Within an hour, my phone exploded. Calls from unknown numbers, relatives I barely knew, family friends I'd met maybe twice at weddings or funerals, people who'd never bothered to acknowledge my existence, but who now desperately needed me to save the family. Voicemails from my mother's sister, Aunt Patricia, whom I hadn't spoken to since I was 16. Claire, dear, it's Aunt Patricia. I know we haven't talked in ages, but this situation with your father is just dreadful, and the family needs to pull together. Please call me back. Emails from distant cousins. Claire, I hope you're well. I know things have been complicated, but family is family, and we need to support each other through this crisis. All with the same underlying message, the same emotional manipulation wrapped in concern. They need you. You need to help. Family means sacrifice. They need you. Words I'd waited my entire life to hear. Words I'd craved like oxygen or sunlight or any other fundamental requirement for survival. Now they rang hollow, desperate, transactional. Not, we want you, or we miss you, or we're sorry we failed you. Just, we need you to sign documents so we don't lose our money. That evening, Emma found me sitting on our apartment balcony, staring at my silent phone, having turned off the ringer after the 23rd call from an unknown number. What's wrong? She asked, settling into the chair next to mine, her hand finding mine automatically, because that's what people who actually love you do. They notice when something's wrong, and they show up. I explained everything. The trust, the lawyer's call, the desperate, sudden need for my signature after 3 years of not even noticing I existed. Emma listened with the active attention I'd learned meant love, asking clarifying questions, not interrupting, actually absorbing what I was saying instead of waiting for her turn to talk. When I finished, she asked the question that cut straight to the heart of everything. What do you want to do? Not what you think you should do, or what guilt is telling you to do. What do you actually want? I don't know, I admitted, and it felt good to just be honest instead of performing certainty I didn't feel. Part of me wants to help because they're still my family despite everything. Because watching anyone suffer feels wrong, even when they've hurt me. But another part of me is so angry that they only care about me now because they need something, that I'm only visible when I'm useful. Have any of them actually called you directly? Emma asked, and I loved her for going straight to the thing that mattered. Your parents, Victoria, Marcus, have they reached out personally, or just sent flying monkeys and lawyers to pressure you? I checked my phone. scrolling through the voicemails and emails and texts from the past few hours. Dozens of messages from extended family and family friends, from people who'd never cared about my existence, but who now needed me to be family-oriented and self-sacrificing. Nothing from Richard Mitchell. Nothing from Catherine. Nothing from Victoria or Marcus themselves. They couldn't even be bothered to call me directly, to acknowledge me enough to ask for help personally. They'd send intermediaries and proxies and lawyers, treating me like a business problem to be managed by appropriate personnel, rather than a daughter and sister who deserved direct communication. 2 days after Lawrence Pemberton's initial call, he contacted me again, and this time his voice carried open desperation instead of professional detachment.
Miss Mitchell, I'm begging you to reconsider your position. Your father's arraignment is scheduled for next week. Your brother's legal team needs retainer funds immediately, or they'll have to withdraw from the case. Your family is facing complete and total destruction. You have the power to prevent that with a single signature. Surely whatever personal issues exist between you can be set aside in the face of this crisis.
"Tell me something, Mr. Pemberton," I said, keeping my voice pleasant and curious, like I was asking about the weather. Did my family even know I'd cut contact? Did they notice I'd been gone for 3 years? A long telltale pause that told me everything. I believe they assumed you were simply busy with your own life, Miss Mitchell. They didn't realize you'd actively severed all contact. They didn't realize, I repeated slowly, letting each word land with weight. Because they never tried to reach out. Not once in 3 full years. Birthdays, holidays, random Tuesdays, nothing. They didn't notice I was gone, because they never looked for me in the first place. I was so irrelevant to them that my complete absence from their lives went entirely undetected for over 1,000 days. Miss Mitchell, while I understand that must be painful, you don't understand. I interrupted gently. You can't. But here's what I'll do, Mr. Pemberton. If my family wants my help, they can ask me themselves. Not through lawyers or distant relatives or family friends. Themselves. My father, my mother, Victoria, Marcus. If they want my signature, they can pick up the phone and call me directly. Until then, my position remains unchanged. I hung up and immediately blocked his number, because I was done being the one who made things easy for people who'd made my entire life hard. That evening, my phone finally rang with a number I recognized, a number I'd had blocked for 3 years. Victoria. My hand shook as I stared at her name on my screen. My sister who'd spent 31 years making me feel small and stupid and worthless, who was calling me now because she needed something. I answered on the 4th ring. "Claire? Oh, thank God you answered. It's Victoria. We need to talk." Her voice felt alien after 3 years of silence, familiar and strange at the same time, like hearing a recording of yourself and not quite recognizing it. No, how are you? No, where have you been? No, I'm sorry. Just straight to business, straight to the need, straight to what she wanted from me. Typical Victoria. "Hello, Victoria." My voice came out flat and controlled, my teacher voice that gave away nothing. "Listen, I know things have been complicated between us." Complicated. That's what she called 31 years of being treated like I didn't matter. Complicated. But this situation with Dad is extremely serious. I'm sure the lawyer explained everything to you. We need you to sign the trust documents immediately, so we can access the funds and mount proper legal defenses. Can you meet us tomorrow at Pemberton's office? Say 10 a.m.? I'll have my assistant send you the address. No apology. No acknowledgement of 3 years of absolute silence. No, where have you been? Or, are you okay? Or, I've missed you. or any phrase that might suggest she'd noticed or cared about my absence. Just straight to logistics, straight to the signature she needed, straight to treating me like a business associate instead of her sister. "Victoria, when is my birthday?" I asked. Silence. Then, "What? Claire, this isn't the time for games. This is serious. Dad could go to prison. Marcus too. Mom and Dad will lose everything. We need to focus on—" "When is my birthday?" I repeated. "What do I teach? Where do I live? When did you last speak to me?" More silence, longer this time, and I could practically hear her brain scrambling for answers she didn't have, because she'd never cared enough to know them. "Claire, I don't understand what any of this has to do with the current crisis. We need to discuss Dad's legal situation, not play trivia games about—" "You don't know, do you?" I said, and something like satisfaction settled in my chest. "You don't know a single basic fact about my life because you've never cared enough to learn them. I cut all contact 3 years ago, Victoria. 3 entire years. I blocked all of you, moved, disappeared completely. And not one of you noticed. Not one email or call or text asking if I was okay or alive or where I'd gone. 3 years of silence because I mattered so little that my absence was invisible. That's not fair, Claire. We've all been busy with our own lives and careers. You're an adult with your own— I had a birthday every single year. I interrupted, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Christmas every year. Thanksgiving every year. 3 years of opportunities to reach out, to check in, to show even the smallest amount of care. And you never did. Not you, not Marcus, not Mom or Dad. Because I don't matter to you. I never have. I've spent my entire life being invisible in my own family, and you're proving it right now by not even acknowledging that you forgot I existed." Victoria's voice hardened into the tone she used in court when witnesses weren't cooperating. "So what? You're going to punish the entire family because your feelings are hurt? You're going to let Dad go to prison, let Marcus's life be ruined, let Mom and Dad lose everything they've worked for, all because we didn't send you enough birthday cards? That's incredibly petty and selfish, Claire." "It's not about birthday cards," I said quietly. "It's about you erasing my entire existence for 31 years and only remembering I exist when you need something. It's about consequences for treating people like they're worthless."
We never treated you like you're worthless. That's so dramatic.
Then tell me one thing about my life, Victoria. One genuine thing. Am I in a relationship? Do I live alone? What grade do I teach? What are my hobbies? What matters to me? If you can answer even one of those questions, I'll consider signing." Silence stretched out like taffy, pulled thin and uncomfortable. Finally, Victoria said, "You're a teacher. Elementary school. You work with kids." "What grade? What kind of kids? Where is my school?" Nothing. "Do I have a partner? Am I married, dating, single?" Nothing. "What's my address, Victoria? My phone number? My email? My birthday?"
Claire, I don't see how any of this—
"March 17th, I said. "My birthday is March 17th. I turned 31 4 months ago." "You forgot it, just like you've forgotten every year since I was born. I teach 3rd grade special needs students at Riverside Elementary. I've been with my girlfriend Emma for 2.5 years. We live together in an apartment you've never seen and never asked about. I took up pottery last year. I volunteer at a women's shelter on weekends. My favorite color is still blue like it's been since I was 6 years old. And you don't know any of this because you've never asked, never cared, never saw me as a person worth knowing." Victoria's voice went cold and sharp. "Fine, what do you want, Claire? Money? Is that what this is about? You want to be paid for your signature? Name your price." And there it was,
the core belief that everything was transactional, that love and connection and family could be reduced to financial exchange. Whatever tiny hope I'd had that maybe, somehow, she might actually care, it died in that moment.
I want you to see me as a person, I said, and my voice broke on the last word. I want you to acknowledge that you hurt me. I want you to care that I existed before you needed something from me. But you can't do that, can you? Because to you, I'm just an obstacle between you and the trust money. Not your sister who's been invisible her whole life. This is extortion, Victoria hissed. You're holding the family hostage for your petty emotional needs while Dad faces prison time. Do you understand that? People are going to actual prison, Claire, and you're playing victim about not getting enough attention? I'm not playing victim. I'm stating facts. I'm not the one who committed securities fraud. I'm not the one who made illegal investments. I'm not the one who destroyed this family's finances. Those were choices Dad and Marcus made. And I'm not the one who treated their daughter and sister like she was invisible for 31 years. Those were choices all of you made.
I'm just declining to rescue you from the consequences of your own actions.
I took a breath. If Dad, Mom, or Marcus want to talk to me personally, actually talk to me, not ask for my signature, they know how to reach me. But I'm not signing anything until I hear from them directly. And maybe not even then. Because you know what, Victoria? For the first time in my entire life, I have power in this family. The invisible one, the disappointment, the failure. I'm the one who gets to decide your future. And it feels really, really good. I ended the call. My hands were shaking, but I felt oddly calm, clear-headed, powerful in a way I'd never experienced in relationship to my family. Emma had been listening from the doorway, and she came over, wrapped me in a hug that felt like safety. "You okay?" she asked against my hair. "Yeah," I said. And for the first time in dealing with the Mitchells, I actually meant it. For the first time in my entire life dealing with them, I actually am okay.
Over the next week, the pressure intensified like a slow-building storm. More relatives called. My father's brother, Uncle James, who I'd met exactly twice in my life. "Claire, I know we don't know each other well, but family is family, and your father needs you right now." Offers of money started appearing. My mother's college roommate somehow had my email and sent a message. "Dear Claire, your mother mentioned you might need financial incentive to help the family. What amount would make this easier for you?" Some messages came with outright threats wrapped in concern. Aunt Patricia again. "I'd hate to think you were the kind of person who'd let her family be destroyed over ancient history and grudges. That's not who you are, is it, dear?" But still, nothing from Richard Mitchell, Catherine Mitchell, Victoria, or Marcus themselves. They'd rather send every proxy and intermediary and distant relation than actually speak to me themselves. Then acknowledge me enough to ask for help directly. 10 days after Lawrence Pemberton's initial call, my phone rang with my mother's number. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering, my heart pounding in a way I hated, because she shouldn't still have this power over me. "Claire, darling, we need to talk." Catherine's voice had that performative warmth I recognized from every church lady interaction and charity event throughout my childhood. The tone reserved for people you needed to impress or manipulate. Never genuine emotion. Never real connection. "Hello, Mother. This situation has gotten completely out of hand, and I think there's been some miscommunication that's made things seem worse than they are. Your father is facing very serious charges that could result in significant prison time, and Marcus is implicated as well. We need access to Grandma Evelyn's trust to mount proper legal defenses, and Victoria mentioned you're being difficult about signing the authorization documents." "I'm not being difficult," I said, my voice steady. "I'm asking to be treated like a human being instead of a rubber stamp." "Don't be dramatic, Claire. We've always treated you well. You had every advantage growing up, the best schools, nice clothes, everything you needed. When is my birthday, Mom? The question came out calm and clear. Catherine sighed, annoyed. I really don't have time for games, Claire. We're discussing a serious family crisis, not playing trivia. It's not a game. If you can tell me my birthday without looking it up, I'll consider signing the documents. Your birthday is in... Catherine paused, and I could practically hear her brain scrambling. March? February? One of the spring months. Claire, I'm 62 years old. I can barely remember my own birthday half the time. You can't expect me to. March 17th, I said. I turned 31 4 months ago. You forgot again, just like you forget every single year. You didn't send a card, didn't call, didn't acknowledge it at all until I mentioned it to you 3 days later, and you said you'd been busy with Marcus's funding announcement. You've never once remembered my birthday without prompting. That's not fair. We sent you a card. You sent a generic card 2 weeks late that said happy birthday with both your signatures, but no personal message, no mention of what year I was turning, nothing that indicated you knew or cared who I am. The same card you'd send to a distant acquaintance whose name you barely remember. My voice stayed level, but something hot was building in my chest. You don't know when my birthday is. You don't know what I teach, what grade, what school. You don't know where I live, or that I've been in a serious relationship for 2.5 years with a woman I love. You don't know me at all because you've never tried to know me, never cared enough to ask questions or remember answers. Catherine's tone hardened immediately, shifting from fake warmth to cold anger. I am your mother, Claire. I raised you, fed you, clothed you, sent you to excellent schools, gave you every opportunity. And this is how you repay me? By abandoning your family when we're in crisis? You didn't raise me, Mom. Nannies raised me. You were too busy with charity boards and society events and maintaining your social status. And I haven't abandoned anyone. I've been gone for 3 entire years, and you only just noticed when you needed something from me. I was so invisible to you that my complete absence went undetected for over 1,000 days. That is a vicious and unfair characterization. We've always known where you were, What's my address? I interrupted. Where do I live? Silence. Dead, empty silence that said everything. You don't know. You never asked. I moved 2 years ago to a new apartment and didn't tell you. And you never realized because you never tried to visit or send anything, or show up unannounced, the way families who actually care about each other do. I was invisible to you my entire life. The only time I matter, the only time I'm worth noticing, is when you need something from me. So you're going to let your father go to prison? Let Marcus's entire future be destroyed? Let your parents lose everything we've worked for our entire lives? Catherine's voice was rising, cracking slightly. What kind of daughter does that? What kind of person are you? The kind who learned from the family that raised her that love is conditional and transactional, that worth is measured by achievement and status, that some people matter and others don't. You taught me that, Mom. You and Dad and Victoria and Marcus. You taught me that I don't matter unless I'm useful. Well, now I'm useful. And now you get to learn what it feels like when someone you need doesn't care about you. I paused. Let that sink in. I'll make you a deal. I'll sign the trust documents under one condition. Finally. What do you want? We can arrange reasonable compensation for your cooperation. We can... I don't want money, I interrupted. I want family therapy. All 5 of us. 6 months minimum. Weekly sessions with a qualified, trauma-informed therapist, where we actually address the years of emotional neglect and damage. If you're all willing to do that work, to actually acknowledge how you've treated me and try to build something real instead of this toxic performance you call family, I'll sign. Therapy? Claire, that's absolutely absurd. We don't need therapy. We need your signature on legal documents. Catherine's voice went up another octave. This is extortion. This is manipulation. This is...
This is me offering you a path forward that requires you to actually see me as a person instead of a convenient signature. Take it or leave it. We don't have time for months of therapy while your father's criminal trial proceeds. This is unreasonable and selfish, and then I guess you'll have to face the consequences of your choices without me saving you. Your call, Mom. I hung up. Immediately blocked her number 2. Emma looked at me with something like awe. Holy shit. You really did it. I did, I said, and started laughing. Partially from release, and partially from the sheer absurdity of offering my family exactly what they needed: connection, acknowledgement, actual relationship, and watching them reject it because it required work. 2 days later, Lawrence Pemberton called from yet another number I didn't recognize.
Miss Mitchell, your father's legal team has informed me that if you don't sign the authorization by Friday, they'll have no choice but to accept a plea deal that includes prison time. Your brother faces similar prospects. Your parents will be forced to sell their home and liquidate all assets to cover legal fees and restitution. Is this really the outcome you want? Mr. Pemberton, did my family agree to family therapy? They feel that therapy is unnecessary and inappropriate, that family matters should remain private and not be discussed with outsiders. They're willing to offer you financial compensation for your signature instead. Then they've made their choice. They'd rather go to prison than acknowledge they hurt me. That tells me everything I need to know about how little I matter to them. My voice stayed calm. I offered them a genuine path to something real. They refused because it required actual effort and vulnerability. What happens now is consequence, not cruelty. It's not my responsibility to save them from themselves. But Miss Mitchell, goodbye, Mr. Pemberton. Please stop calling me. I blocked that number too. That night, Emma asked the question I'd been avoiding. Do you feel guilty? I thought about it carefully, examining my feelings like I'd learned to do in therapy. I feel sad that it came to this. Sad that they'd rather lose everything than admit they were wrong or try to build something real. But guilty? No. I offered them an actual chance at connection, at building genuine family, at healing decades of damage. They chose pride and image and refusal over that. That's on them, not me. On Friday, I received a group email, the first direct communication from Marcus in over 3 years. Subject line: family decision. Body of email: you're dead to us. Don't ever contact this family again. What you're doing is unforgivable, and we want nothing to do with you. You are not a Mitchell anymore. I read it twice, felt the words land like I thought they'd hurt, but they didn't. Instead, I felt relief. They'd made it official. I was free. I never signed the documents. Richard Mitchell took a plea deal and served 18 months in federal prison for securities fraud. Marcus faced similar charges and served 14 months. The family lost most of their assets in seizure and settlements. The Connecticut estate Victoria lived in sold to pay civil judgments. The vacation properties liquidated. The country club memberships lapsed. The lifestyle of excess and status they'd built their entire identities around dismantled piece by piece. Victoria divorced James after the money disappeared. Apparently, he'd married the prestige and connections, not the person, and when both evaporated, he left. Catherine and Richard downsized from their mansion to a modest 2-bedroom condo in a regular neighborhood, living on what remained of Richard's retirement account after legal fees and restitution ate through everything. I heard about all of this through distant relatives who still had my email, who sent updates like gossip. Did you hear about Victoria's divorce? Your parents sold the house. Marcus got out of prison last month. None of it came from the Mitchells themselves. They kept their word. I was dead to them. And honestly, I thrived. I married Emma in a small, beautiful ceremony 2 years later, surrounded by friends who actually loved us, in a garden with handwritten vows and food we'd cooked ourselves. I continued teaching, finding deep purpose in helping children who felt overlooked and invisible. kids who reminded me of my younger self. I built a life rich in meaning, if not in money, full of genuine connection instead of transactional performance. 3 years after refusing to sign the trust documents, I received a letter forwarded from my old address to my P.O. box. The return address was the federal prison where my father had served his time. Inside was a short, handwritten note on prison stationery. Claire, you were right. About all of it. I built my entire life on status and money and achievement, and I taught my children to value the same things. I taught Victoria and Marcus that success was everything, and I taught you that you didn't matter because you chose a different path. I see now what I did. I see what I destroyed. I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I finally understand what you tried to tell us. Dad. I cried when I read it, not from joy or vindication, but from grief for what might have been possible if he'd learned this lesson 30 years earlier. If he'd valued connection over status when there was still time to build something real. I wrote back a brief note. Dad, I appreciate the apology. It matters that you see it now. I hope you find peace and build something better with whoever is still in your life. I'm building a good life with people who love me. I wish you well, Claire. I didn't offer reconciliation. The damage was too deep, the patterns too ingrained, the years too many. But I acknowledged his growth, which was more grace than they'd shown me in 31 years. On my 34th birthday, Emma surprised me with a small garden party. Friends brought food, brought laughter, brought genuine affection. Someone asked, "What happened with your family? You never talk about them." I smiled. I don't have family in the traditional sense, but I have this: people who see me, value me, celebrate me existing. That's better than blood ever was. And I meant it. The Mitchells had taught me what family shouldn't be: transactional, conditional, based on achievement instead of love. Emma and our friends and my students showed me what it could be: chosen, genuine, based on actually caring whether someone exists. Years later, when students asked me about handling difficult family situations, I told them, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is let toxic people face the consequences of their choices. Setting boundaries isn't cruel, it's survival. And sometimes walking away from people who hurt you is the most loving thing you can do for everyone involved. You teach people how to treat you, and if they won't learn, you're allowed to stop being their teacher. I'd learned it the hard way, but I'd learned it true. And that was worth more than any trust fund or family approval could ever be. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story reminded you that you don't owe loyalty to people who've never valued you, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment. Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your own well-being? Did you set boundaries or give in? I read every one. If you know someone trapped in a family that only sees them when they're useful, share this with them. Hit subscribe for more stories like this. I'll see you in the next one. Remember, you're allowed to stop setting yourself on fire to keep people warm who wouldn't notice if you froze.